Okay, so today we're diving deep into the world of mediumship development, and we've got an incredible guide to help us navigate this fascinating, often misunderstood terrain.
You.
Mia Ottosson's The Complete Medium.
It's a really fascinating book.
It is. It really is. It's almost like having this personal roadmap for understanding like the fundamentals of this practice.
Yeah.
And, I think what's really cool about this deep dive is it's for anyone who's curious about mediumship, whether you're just starting to explore or you've already been practicing for a while,
Right.
we're really going to break down like the core teachings of Mia Ottosson, who brings like decades of experience
Yeah.
to this topic.
Over 30 years as a professional medium. She's been teaching for over 25 years at places like the Arthur Findlay College, which is like, the place to go for this kind of training.
Yeah, so she's like the real deal.
Yeah, she's a serious heavy hitter in the mediumship world.
Yeah. So what's really cool is she structures her guidance as like a 10-day journey, covering like these core concepts, practical exercises, personal insights, even reflective questions.
Yeah, it's a really nicely structured journey to follow along.
It is.
And it's very approachable, even for people who are totally new to this.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this deep dive, we're not going to be able to cover everything, but we're going to extract like the most valuable nuggets
Right.
from this journey.
The core element.
Yeah. And I think whether you're, like I said, just curious or maybe you're actively seeking to kind of develop your own abilities, there's going to be something in here for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's just jump right into it.
Let's do it.
Day one of Ottosson's journey really dives into this, very very fundamental aspect of mediumship, which is the challenge of mediumship development.
Mhm.
And I think it's particularly relevant for us because I think a lot of people out there probably feel this, even if they've been practicing for years.
Mm.
It's this experience of doubt and uncertainty.
Right. And it's so reassuring to hear that even someone like Mia Ottosson, with her decades of experience, still grapples with these feelings.
It is.
She actually shares a very honest moment in the book. She says, I've been working for 30 years, and the other day I was thinking, my God, can I really do this?
It's so relatable.
It is. And, when you hear someone like her admit to that, I think it makes those feelings of doubt that many of us encounter so much more normal.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off a bit.
Yeah, it does. And it's almost like giving permission to be like, you know what, this is part of the process.
Totally.
Even if you've been doing this for a long time, you can still have those moments where you're like, wait a minute, am I really doing this?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's kind of unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
Why do you think mediumship work in particular, seems to really bring up these feelings of insecurity?
Well, I think one of the key reasons is that unlike so many other skills we learn, you think about learning to play an instrument or learning to cook, there are recipes, there's sheet music,
Yeah, there's sap.
there's some kind of formula you can follow.
Yeah.
But with mediumship, there isn't a fixed manual or script for every session.
Right.
Every connection with spirit, every interaction with a client is completely unique.
That's true.
And it unfolds in its own way.
Yeah.
And so in a way, it can feel a bit like stepping into the unknown every single time.
Yeah, you're kind of going in blind every time.
Yeah, and that can be unnerving.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, there's a really significant one. This fear of delusion.
Oh, yeah.
This nagging question that many practitioners grapple with.
Yeah.
Am I genuinely receiving something from the spirit world, or am I just making it up? Am I imagining things?
It's so easy to go down that rabbit hole,
It is.
you
And it's hard to know.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's like,
Mhm.
is this me? Is this my imagination? Is this real?
Yeah. And then you add on to that this desire for perfection that many mediums have this pressure to be consistently accurate.
Oh, especially when you're working with clients.
Absolutely.
They're coming to you for like real answers and it's a very high standard to hold yourself to, given the subtle nature of the work.
Right. Yeah.
And I can only imagine, when you're working in such a public way, often without any like tangible proof,
Right.
that other people can see or verify,
Yeah.
that just amplifies those underlying insecurities.
Absolutely. Ottosson actually describes it as public vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
operating without a visible safety net.
Yeah.
And I think that resonates with so many mediums because you're putting yourself out there in a way that most people don't have to in their professional lives.
Yeah.
But this is where her perspective becomes really interesting.
Okay.
She offers a really powerful way to reframe those moments when the information you're getting doesn't immediately resonate.
Tell me more about that.
So she says, there are no no's. A no is just more learning because the mind is trying to interpret energy. And when you get it wrong, it might not be wrong. It's just that you don't understand it yet.
That's interesting.
So think about it. How many times has a medium, dismissed a fleeting image or a sensation or a word that popped into their mind as wrong?
All the time, probably.
Right, because it doesn't seem to fit.
Right.
But Ottosson's insight here encourages you to actually hold on to those seemingly incorrect pieces
Oh, interesting.
because they might unlock a deeper understanding later in the session or even in future work,
Okay.
revealing a connection you initially missed.
It's like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Exactly.
Like just because it doesn't make sense right now doesn't mean it's not valuable information.
Yeah. Hold on to it, It might be a piece of the puzzle that you need later on.
I like that. So it's about cultivating like a detective like curiosity rather than like immediate judgment,
Exactly.
which is so easy to do,
It is,
especially when you're like under pressure, to perform.
especially in those moments.
So I love that she offers this different perspective. It's really about like not being so hard on yourself
Right.
and really kind of seeing the learning in everything.
Exactly. It takes away the sting of being wrong and encourages a much more open and investigative approach.
Yeah. And she even includes like reflection questions, to prompt like further thought at the end of day one.
Yeah. She has some really good ones in there.
So what are some of the things that she asks us to consider?
Well, she encourages us to identify the specific aspects of mediumship work that trigger our strongest feelings of doubt or insecurity.
Okay.
So she's asking us to really pinpoint those triggers.
Okay.
What is it that really brings up those feelings for you? Is it the initial attempt to make contact with the spirit world? Is it the pressure to provide specific, verifiable evidence?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the prospect of working with individuals who might be skeptical.
Yeah.
Because we all have those different things that we're more sensitive to.
Yeah, it's different for everybody.
Right.
But it's good to know like what are my triggers so that I can be more aware of them.
Exactly. So the first step is really about self-awareness, pinpointing those triggers.
Right.
Because recognizing what sparks those feelings is the crucial first step towards understanding them
Yeah.
and ultimately transforming how you approach them.
Okay. So that was day one.
That was day one.
A lot of great stuff in there.
Yeah, lots to think about already.
Yeah, so much. And it's like, I love that she starts with that because it's so foundational. It's
Yeah.
like, before we even get into the nitty gritty of like how to do readings,
Right.
she's like, let's talk about the mindset.
The inner game.
Yeah, the inner game.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Absolutely. And then she takes us to day two,
Okay, day two, here we go.
where she introduces what she considers to be the most fundamental and essential practice.
Oh, this is big.
This is big.
Okay, tell me.
This is sitting in the power.
Sitting in the power. Okay.
Yeah, and she's very clear about this. She says, if you can't do anything else with your practicing, sit in the power. That will shape the medium as you are.
She makes it sound like this is like the bedrock.
It is. It's the foundation upon which all other mediumistic abilities are developed.
Okay, so break this down for me.
Okay, so what are the benefits of regularly practicing sitting in the power?
Yes.
Well, first of all, it trains the mind to develop sustained focus.
Okay.
Okay, so this enhanced ability to concentrate
Okay.
becomes invaluable when you're working with spirit for a client
Okay.
because it allows you to remain attuned to the often very subtle energies and information that are coming through.
So it's like mental training, like going to the gym for your focus.
Exactly, yeah.
That's
Strengthening your ability to really hone in and be present with what you're sensing.
okay.
But beyond just the focus, she emphasizes that by dedicating this quiet time to simply being present with the energy, you build inner resilience.
Interesting. Okay.
So she points out that during this quiet contemplation, things that you might be avoiding or that cause you discomfort can sometimes surface.
Okay.
There's those shadow parts of ourselves that we tend to shy away from.
Right.
But by facing these inner challenges in a calm and contained space,
Okay.
you become more grounded and less susceptible to the emotional fluctuations
Okay.
that can sometimes affect readings.
I can see how that would be really important.
Yeah, because if you're easily thrown off by your own emotions, it's going to be much harder to discern between your stuff
Yeah.
and what's coming from the spirit world.
Yeah. It's like you need to kind of be like a clear vessel.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and she even mentions in the book that she's never fallen flat on her face in her mediumship. And she attributes that directly to starting this practice early in her development.
Oh, wow.
She's like, this is what kept me grounded. This is what kept me stable. Even when I was just starting out and encountering all these new experiences.
So what does the practice actually look like? What do you actually do when you're sitting in the power?
Well, it's surprisingly straightforward. It's one of those things that sounds very simple, but it's actually quite profound in its effects.
Yeah. Sometimes the simplest things are the most powerful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it involves finding a quiet environment where you won't be disturbed, setting a clear intention to connect with spirit energy, and then simply being present.
Okay.
There's no need to actively try to receive specific messages or create particular experiences. It's really just about being in that space with that intention.
So it's not like a guided meditation where you're trying to visualize things?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
It can be, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
It's more about just allowing whatever wants to come up,
Okay.
without judgment, without trying to force it.
So, like, what if your mind wanders? Like, what if you start thinking about groceries or something?
Yeah, well, that's totally natural. The mind is a busy place. But the key is, when you notice your mind wandering, you gently redirect your focus back to your initial intention.
Okay.
So you're not beating yourself up for getting distracted.
Right.
You're just gently bringing yourself back to that center.
I like that. So it's almost like training a puppy, You
Yeah.
don't get mad at the puppy when
Yeah.
it wanders off.
Yeah.
You just gently bring it back.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
So she suggests starting with short periods, perhaps just 5 to 10 minutes,
Okay.
and then gradually increasing the duration as you become more comfortable.
Okay, that's doable.
Yeah, absolutely.
5 to 10 minutes, I think I could manage that.
Yeah, anyone can do that.
And she even has a quote in the book about this.
She does. She says, when you're sitting in the power, nothing happens. And that's where everything happens.
Whoa, what does that even mean?
It's such a great quote, isn't it?
It is.
Because it's paradoxical.
It is.
But like, how can nothing be happening and everything be happening at the same time?
Right.
But what she's getting at is that this practice goes beyond mere technique.
Okay.
It's not just about learning a skill.
Hmm.
It's about cultivating an energetic foundation that she refers to as spiritual charisma.
Spiritual charisma. Okay.
Yeah, and it's not charisma in the sense of personal magnetism.
Okay.
It's more about a calm, grounded energy that radiates from a medium who's consistently practiced being present with spirit.
Okay.
It's that sense of peace, of trust, of a comforting presence that clients might describe feeling even before any specific messages come through.
So it's like you're building a strong, steady, energetic signal
Exactly. Yeah.
before you even start doing the work.
Yeah, you're laying the groundwork.
Okay.
Yeah. And the spiritual charisma can be particularly important when you encounter challenging clients or situations involving skepticism,
Oh, yeah.
because that solid energetic foundation helps you to maintain your own center and to project confidence in your connection.
Okay, so it's like you're not so easily swayed by the energy of the room or the skepticism of the client?
Right, because you're coming from a place of strength.
I like that.
Yeah, it's like you've built this inner fortress
Yeah.
that can withstand the storms, so to speak.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So for listeners who are like, intrigued by this idea of sitting in the power, she gives some suggestions for how to start.
She does. She encourages just trying a simple 5-minute sitting, focusing purely on being present with the intention of connecting with spirit energy,
Okay.
and just noticing how that experience might differ from other forms of meditation that you might have tried.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a really interesting experiment to try.
All right, so we did day 1, we did day 2,
2 down.
on to day 3.
Yeah, and day 3 is all about the power of clear intention.
Okay, the power of clear intention.
So this suggests a move from a more receptive stance to a more active direction of your energy.
Okay, so it's not just about sitting back and waiting for spirit to come to you.
Right, it's about taking charge.
Okay.
It's about being proactive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ottosson talks about moving beyond those general, almost hesitant inquiries like, is there anyone present?
Right,
To
right.
actively setting clear and specific intentions for your connection.
Interesting.
And she really believes in this. She says, as soon as you put the intention there, the mind and the universal energy will work for you, not against you. And the spirit world will work with you in that way.
So it's almost like you're kind of aligning yourself with the forces of the universe
Exact.
to manifest what you want.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about consciously directing your focus and energy rather than just passively hoping for a connection to occur.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah. And she shares a really core belief that she's developed through her extensive work.
Okay.
She says, I always believe if you come for a sitting for me and you wish to connect with someone in the spiritual world, that person will be there, 100%. And they have never failed me. Never, ever.
She makes it sound so simple.
It is, in a way.
They are always there.
They're always there.
That's a powerful statement.
It is. It's a conviction that I think is really important for mediums to cultivate, that sense of certainty.
Yeah, because if you go in doubting, that's just going to muddy the waters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not about forcing a connection to happen.
Right.
It's about creating an optimal and focused channel for communication. Think about it like tuning a radio to a very specific frequency.
Okay.
Rather than broadly scanning across the entire dial.
Okay, yeah, you want to get that clear signal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So by clearly stating your intention, even if only to yourself, you're significantly improving your ability to recognize the specific energy and information of the spirit you intend to connect with.
So you're not just getting bombarded with random energies.
Right, you're filtering out the noise.
Okay.
Yeah. And she offers a really simple practice for this.
Okay.
She suggests just clearly stating your intention mentally before you begin any mediumistic work. So if you're giving a reading for someone else, you might silently say to yourself, my intention is to connect with specific relationship for a person's name.
Okay, so be really specific about who you're trying to reach.
Exactly.
And the intention behind the connection.
Yeah, and she encourages trusting that the initial impressions and information you receive will be relevant to this clearly stated intention.
Okay, trust the process.
Trust the process.
She also contrasts this with, a more uncertain approach.
She does. She talks about the maybe approach,
Okay.
which is often characterized by uncertainty, second-guessing your impressions, a kind of scattered quality to your energy.
So it's like you're not really sure what you're doing.
Right. You're kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she contrasts that with the definitely approach.
Definitely.
Yeah. Which naturally rises from setting a clear intention.
Okay.
And this definitely approach tends to foster greater confidence, a stronger trust in those initial impressions, and a clearer, more direct flow of communication.
So it's like you're sending out a strong signal.
Exactly.
That the spirit world can pick up on.
Yeah, and that you yourself can pick up on more easily.
Yeah, okay, so intention, intention, intention.
Intention is key.
I love it.
Yeah, and it's not just in mediumship, it's in life too.
It's true.
If you're not clear about what you want, you're not going to get it.
Absolutely. All right, so now we're moving on to day 4.
Day 4.
Okay.
This is where she gets into establishing quick, confident connections.
Okay, so efficiency and assurance are really important here.
They are. And she emphasizes the importance of establishing contact with the spirit world efficiently.
Okay.
In order to avoid losing that delicate, energetic link.
So you don't want to, dilly-dally.
No. You want to be quick.
Get right to it.
Yeah, get right to it. And she says, this is very personal for her, she says. There is nothing worse for a medium than to drop the contact. At least for me, it haunts me forever.
So she's speaking from experience. She is. And I think a lot of mediums can relate to that, that feeling of you had a connection and then you lost it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, what could I have done differently?
Oh, I've been there.
Yeah.
Not with mediumship, but with other things in life.
Right, right.
Whereas I had that opportunity and I let it slip away.
Yeah, that feeling of regret.
Yeah.
So she's really emphasizing here the importance of maintaining that connection once it's established.
So how do we do that? What are her tips?
Well, her primary recommendation is what she calls the relationship-first approach.
Relationship first, okay.
Yeah, so instead of beginning with general or vague descriptions,
Okay.
I have a female spirit here.
Right.
She strongly advocates starting by identifying the relationship to the recipient.
Okay.
So you would say something like, I have your mother here.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so get right to the point.
Right to the point.
Don't waste time with vague descriptions.
Yeah, because a general description could potentially fit many people.
That's true, yeah. So it's much more effective to immediately ground the connection in something personal and identifiable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so relationship first.
Relationship first.
Got it.
And then alongside that, she introduces a practical guideline called the 5 evidence rule.
The 5 evidence rule. Okay, tell me about that.
So this rule suggests that you should aim to offer a maximum of 5 distinct pieces of evidence in your initial attempt to establish contact.
Okay.
So you're not just rattling off a whole bunch of information.
Okay.
You're being very selective.
Okay.
You're choosing the most important details.
Uh-huh.
And if the recipient doesn't recognize the spirit being described within those first 5 details.
Mm-hmm.
Ottosson advises going back and trying to clarify those initial pieces of information rather than simply adding more and more new details.
Okay, so less is more in this case.
Exactly. Yeah.
Quality over quantity.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Because this strategy helps to prevent confusion. And perhaps more importantly, it builds confidence in your ability to accurately pinpoint the specific spirit who's coming through.
Okay, so you're not second-guessing yourself.
Right.
You're like, no, I got this.
Exactly.
Exact fit it in this information.
Yeah, it's a really powerful technique for developing that inner knowing.
So instead of overwhelming the recipient with a ton of information,
Right.
you're really focusing on the quality and clarity of those initial pieces of evidence.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah. And for a practical exercise in developing this skill,
Okay.
she recommends starting by clearly stating the relationship you perceive,
Okay.
then adding just 2 or 3 specific details about that individual.
Okay.
And then you pause, you check for confirmation from the recipient if they don't recognize the spirit.
Okay.
Rather than adding entirely new information, you try rephrasing or clarifying the initial details you provided.
Okay.
So you're really honing in on those first impressions,
Yeah.
and you're making sure that they're clear and accurate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then once the connection is confirmed,
Then you can go deeper.
then you can proceed to explore deeper and more nuanced evidence.
Yeah. Okay, I like that.
Yeah. And she also touches on the energetic aspect of making these quick connections.
Tell me more about that.
So she emphasizes that establishing these initial connections quickly
Okay.
helps to create an overall atmosphere of confident mediumship.
Okay.
It sets the tone for the entire reading.
So it's not just about the information itself.
Right.
It's about the energy behind it.
It's the energy, it's the confidence, it's the clarity. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she believes that mediumship is quick and fast. We're going to be up here. We're going to be alert. We're going to have fun. We're going to be in action.
It's like you're in the zone.
Yeah, exactly.
You're in flow.
You're in flow.
Yeah, I like that.
And this energetic and confident approach can be beneficial for both the medium and the person receiving the reading.
Yeah.
It creates a positive and supportive dynamic.
Well, it's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So on to day 6.
Day 6.
Okay.
This is where we explore the blend of psychic and mediumship.
Okay.
And she introduces this really interesting concept of a 50-50 partnership.
Okay, 50-50 partnership.
Right?
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, and I think this is something that can be really clarifying for a lot of people who are interested in this field.
Hey.
Because there's often this misconception that pure mediumship exists
Okay.
entirely separate from any psychic abilities.
Okay.
This idea that a true medium is just a channel for spirit and nothing else.
Right, right.
But Ottosson directly addresses that. She
Right.
says the psychic energy is so ugly. No, it's not. It's a complement to the mediumship. Without its psychic energy, if we don't learn the intuitiveness of it, you're only going to be half the medium you can be.
So she's saying that psychic ability isn't like a separate or lesser skill?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's an essential and complementary aspect of effective mediumship.
So it's like they work together.
They work together.
Yeah, she's really emphasizing the importance of integrating both. Yeah, so she clarifies the distinction between what we consider mediumistic energy,
Okay.
which is the direct communication and specific evidence coming from the spirit person themselves,
Okay.
and psychic energy, which is your own intuitive connection with the client and the insights you receive about their life and circumstances.
Okay, so mediumistic energy is coming from spirit.
Yes.
Psychic energy is coming from you.
Coming from you, yeah.
Okay.
Your intuition, your empathy, your ability to sense energy.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and she also talks about the expectations that clients often have.
Okay.
She points out that clients often mistakenly believe that the spirits they connect with will provide direct advice and guidance about their current life situations.
Okay.
Like, my grandmother's going to tell me whether or not I should take that job.
Right. Like spirit's going to give you like a to-do list.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But she explains that this type of guidance typically comes through the medium's own intuitive abilities.
Okay.
Their psychic connection with the client's energy.
So it's not actually spirit giving the advice?
No, not usually.
Okay.
She says they think that the grandmother is going to come in and tell them what they is going to do in their life. And they don't do that. And in all honesty, very little comes from the spirit. It's only when it's pure evidence it comes from the spirit. When it comes to the assessments, when it comes for quieting, it's usually us.
Okay. That's really important to know.
It is.
Because I think a lot of people go into readings expecting, spirit to tell them what to do.
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's actually more nuanced than that.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how does this 50-50 partnership actually work in practice?
Yeah, break it down for me.
So Ottosson describes it as a collaborative effort where the spirit provides the verifiable evidence,
Yeah, okay.
the specific details about their life, their personality, their connection to the recipient.
Right.
And then the medium uses their intuitive abilities to understand the relevance and deeper meaning of that evidence for the client in their current situation.
Hmm.
So it's like a two-way street.
Yeah, okay.
Spirit gives you the information,
Okay.
and then you use your intuition to make sense of it
Okay.
for the client.
Yeah. And that makes so much sense because spirit's not going to know what's going on in the client's life.
Right. They're not privy to all the details.
Right.
So you need that human element
Yeah.
to bridge the gap.
I love it.
Yeah. And she really emphasizes this. She says, you need to work together. So don't underestimate your part of it. It's a 50-50 partnership here.
So it's a team effort.
It's a team.